the very nice thing for us these days is we kind of get a lot of pushback from people, and then we show them the graphs of the creators that have used us. It's like, hey, Topper Guild over here got 60 million subscribers extra in 1 year, from 20 million to 60 million. And John Nellis jumped by 10 million in like 4 months. And so when we show them these graphs, they understand how important it is. It's like, wow, that's quite the multiplier. It's one of the most fun things for me, actually, that if you go to like View Stats or Social Blade and you look at any of these large channels, you can see exactly when they start dubbing with us, because there's just this massive hockey stick that happens in their growth. But it's definitely not something that people think about natively. And like, maybe they shouldn't be necessarily, because they should be just thinking about their content. So like the ideal situation would just be that it's automatically happening for everyone. But yeah, I think it'll increasingly become something that people are aware of, because it's like literally the fastest way I have ever seen any channel grow. So yeah, but that's a hard one, because it's just not something people think about.
All right, well, welcome everybody back to Full Battery Media Podcast. I am your host, Sean Trace, and I have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Nate Stone. I'm the CEO of DittoDub, and we translate people's YouTube videos. We translate lots of very large YouTubers, and we've added over 120 billion views in the last year to the creators that we work with.
That's awesome. Like, how did you get into that? Like, what was the thing, the catalyst that said, you know what, because I had someone reach out to me today, and it was interesting because they said, they are asking me, do you edit Russian videos? And I was sitting there thinking, no, my team doesn't edit Russian videos. Like, there was a person who was, wanting to get Russian videos done, and then they wanted to reach out. And I was just like, this is the type of person that dubbing would really help, because you don't have to have just one language. You can be running things in multiple languages. What started you down this path?
Yeah, so a long time ago, like back when I was in high school, I ran a YouTube channel, and I didn't get it too large. I got it to like 300,000 subscribers, and it was one where I just put together all these like electricity experiments, like lots of high voltage stuff. And at the time, I'd get letters from people all around the world, and they'd complain about how fast I was speaking English, because English was their second language. So back then, I really wanted to dub my content to different languages, but at the time, like the cheapest solutions I could find on Fiverr and such were like $200 per minute per language, and that was just not really something that I could do as a high schooler. So it got shelved for a long time. Yeah. Then I went to school, and I was an ML engineer for Amazon for a bit, and kind of as things started to get a little better, it was like, oh, great. Now with all this AI stuff, we could make it very, very affordable and fast for people to dub their videos into whatever languages they want, maintaining their voices and their emotions. And so that's just kind of what I left Amazon and then started working on.
That's awesome. And it's been a fun journey for you. But, one of the things that you were saying, and I was reading up about some of your, how you frame all of this, you say dubbing increases average view duration. What technically makes a video dubbed, like a dubbed video hold attention longer than the original?
Yeah. So dubbing doesn't always, like our dubbing does. And that's like one of our greatest, I guess, evidence of high quality dubs. What I like to say is, for the average view durations, it has to be a very engaging video. And it's very unlikely that like the dubs themselves are going to be more engaging than the original, because they're trying to match the original. However, if you look at it from the frame of how these different languages don't really have all that much content out in their native language, it's like you take a premier YouTuber here in the United States or Europe, and you translate them over to like Hindi, for instance. There's not a lot of high quality Hindi content, especially in loads of niches. And so for these viewers, it's like an order of magnitude more polished than anything they've ever seen. And so we've seen that a lot of the average view duration for these dubs tend to be higher than the original, which is, kind of interesting.
That's super interesting, because a couple levels on that. First off, being, you're right. Like, there's certain markets that are saturated. Like, you think about that. I live in Southeast Asia. I live in Vietnam. And one of the reasons I moved back here was because I was working in film and television, and I was living in Los Angeles. That's not a great place to work in film and television. I mean, it seems good, but like your coffee barista has a film degree, and it's like the guy over here is like, everyone is really good at what they do. And yet it's a saturated market, and there's a certain amount of attention that can be given to any one work or any one thing. But you cross over into a different market where there just are not that many people doing that, and suddenly you can, be seen more, and
Mhm.
people might pay a little bit more attention because, it's different. And
Yeah.
well, it leads me, go ahead. I want to hear your response to that.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I mean, we've seen some YouTubers where they'll go over to another language and they literally get more views in. It's funny you mentioned Russian earlier because Russian's actually one that we've noticed is like one of the larger ones. So like a lot of times when people post their videos in like say 12 different languages, we've seen that Russian will compose more than 20% of the total views in a lot of these
Wow.
niches. Yeah, yeah. But couldn't agree more. That is absolutely correct.
It's wild. Let me ask you this. I got another question because this is just fascinating to me. Like, when does a creator know that they are ready to go global instead of just fixing their core content first?
Yeah, I mean, definitely if your content isn't resonating at all with anyone, going global is not going to help things very much. And so to me, I would say it's
Right?
like if your yeah, yeah, yeah. If your average view duration and like your you know how you can see like the engagement graph on YouTube, if it's not just like plummeting immediately and you're getting very few views, then you're probably going to benefit actually quite a bit from going global. Like we've actually had channels that have launched directly with dubs immediately from their first inception, and they have grown absurdly fast. And so, but those channels also had like
Hmm.
lots of strategists behind them as well, kind of very very closely curating exactly what to be doing. So, how do you know you're ready? It's really just if you're getting really good engagement from your videos in your niche, then it's not going to hurt anything. It will only amplify it, and many times it will amplify it in a quite massive way.
I love that. Well, that's super interesting. I wanted to ask you this next one because, as you see some people, and I love that you're talking about like looking at the content you have before you even starting to think about that. But when a creator starts trying to go global, are there ever mistakes that are made? Are there, cultural things? I remember a couple years ago, and I know he wasn't trying to go global, but when Logan Paul went to Japan and he had that
Yes.
majorly bad interaction with the culture, and I wonder, are there things that, people do wrong, and not just like the way they talk or things, but like the way what they're saying, but can people go wrong without getting a real localization strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest mistake that we actually see creators make isn't necessarily their content not resonating in the languages because typically like the best creators that we see will launch out their videos in like 40 languages and then they'll prune out the bottom 20%. Um, yeah,
Mm,
because you really just never know what your niches are actually going to do in these languages. You can infer a lot of things. Like, for instance, in India, a lot of tech channels tend to do quite well. They tend to get an absurd amount of views. But yeah, one of the main things that we see creators do incorrectly is they'll dub like one video, their most recent video, and they will put it out there and it won't get a lot of views. And the main reason for that is the YouTube algorithm really loves being able to recommend lots of your content to people. And so
mm,
it's kind of a hard one because it's really if you're not going all the way in, you're not going to see massive results. But if you go all the way in, all of a sudden you see massive results because then not only does your dubbed videos start getting like Mexican viewers and Indian viewers and all that, it's also increasing your the probability that YouTube will be recommending your original videos as well because it all just lifts the whole thing. But for that, you really need uh, your back catalog done too. So what we typically
mhm.
recommend to people is that they do their highest performing evergreen videos and then like up to the last month of their most recent content.
Oh, interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Well, it's interesting too because as I think about this too, um, I think about how, how do you? I mean, this is just the question. I mean, how do you make it sound like the people? Like, what's the technology? Does it really sound like them? Because this is one of the things that I always notice. Like, we go to watch movies here in Vietnam that one of the best examples was when we go to watch kids' movies that
Hmm.
have actors that have a very particular voice. I remember I was watching Jumanji that had been dubbed. And it was just really weird seeing Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart not be Dwayne Johnson and Kevin Hart and
Yeah.
have completely different voices over the top, you know? And so there's a character that people have to their voice. How do you keep that when you
Yeah.
are doing the dubbing?
Sure. So sorry, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain through it. Effectively, every voice has like a fingerprint, and
Yep.
in machine learning, we call that an embedding. And actually, even for like talking to ChatGPT, you're getting a text embedding, but in this case, we're getting an audio embedding. And so, if you feed in a voice, there's a certain model that takes that voice and it turns it into this large. It's called a vector, but it's just like a list of numbers that composes that voice's fingerprint. And the idea
Okay.
is that you sit there and you train a model, and it's actually almost synonymous with the same way that like an LLM or like a ChatGPT model is set up. In fact, it is
Mhm.
very, very, very similar. Uh, and you train it to understand the fingerprint, and then on the output, it outputs these things called tokens. But
Mm.
in like an LLM, these tokens get transferred into text. But in our model, these tokens get transferred back into audio. Um, and so, yeah,
Mm.
you just sit there and you kind of just keep on smacking the LLM over and over and over and over until the audio tokens it's producing is what you are expecting it to produce, with your audio in, audio out. And
That's so
yeah, from
interesting.
all that, it just kind of learns the nuances of the voice.
That's interesting. Well, so it's the voice, but like there's also I've also fascinated by, does the does the machine out, learning, does it really understand languages as well? Like, in
Mm.
English, we might say raining cats and dogs, you know, but you can't translate that into Vietnamese, or like in Vietnamese, it'd be like mưa lớn, which like big rain. How does it approach things like that? Because that's always, as a like lingual person, that's fascinating to me about how it, because it seems to be these things are really nailing it.
Hmm.
I'm so curious by that, man.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like talking about how it's able to do it, I have no
Not
idea,
how,
but
but it does
um,
it.
but it does do it. Uh, I guess it's just more so that the models themselves have such a large context of everything that they can infer deeply into all these different languages and get it nuanced correctly for the region that you're targeting. But like as
That's
for what's
awesome.
actually going on deep inside of it, really no one knows. But
Yeah,
presumably just a lot of correlation, I suppose.
that's rad. That's just awesome. And I'm sorry, those were not on the questions that I prepped, but
No, 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 it's all
my
good. It's
brain,
really
my brain is
fascinating.
fascinated by like this stuff, man. And it's just because,
It's
it's
crazy
like
stuff.
it's it's crazy, and it's hard to like process because you know you think about that. The One of the challenges with like I taught English for many years, and we have this global language that connects a lot of people. But dude,
Hmm.
to really master a language, it takes a long freaking time, like a long time. And to be able to really communicate nuance and to communicate depth. So it's fascinating that we can come to people where they're at. And I love that because you know, my mother-in-law watches my videos and she likes them, and every video, and I'm like, it's kinda crazy, and I was like, "Oh, did you like that?" And she's like, "I don't understand a thing you're saying." And I was like, "Well, it would be really cool if maybe someone could." And like, that's the reason I'm so fascinated by this because it preserves the authenticity, with AI dubbing, do you think it's good enough to preserve emotion, or are we still faking authenticity?
Oh yeah, I mean it can preserve emotion, like very similar to that. How that fingerprint can store the, I guess, like the timbre and all the important qualities of the voice. It can also very, very closely capture the emotion of a given like chunk of audio. Uh, so
Right.
it can preserve it quite well, and it's always getting better. Like one thing I like to point to now, I guess, is I'm not sure if you've seen the recent Seed Dream 2.0. It's like a video generation model, but it was
Oh,
released like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was released like a week ago. Crazy, crazy good quality, like head and shoulders above things. And so the whole field, I guess, is just rapidly, rapidly improving.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because it's like it's improving so much, and it's giving people the ability to relate on levels that we might not have been able to do, especially with the
Hmm.
languages, because I I'm a big sci-fi fan. like, I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and for when I was younger, I absolutely loved Star Trek. Huge
Okay.
Trekkie, and I watched all types of Star Trek. It was before my time, but, like, I remember I was big into sci-fi, so I found it and I was like, "Ooh, what is this?" One of the cool things on The Next Generation that was just like a master class of good storytelling, it had, like, Professor Xavier before he's Professor Xavier, Jean-Luc Picard was the captain,
Yeah.
but one of the things that in the especially The Next Generation, they had, like, the automatic translation, and it was just so interesting to see this, like, they had the little device here that, like, the little, like, Star Trek's insignia actually was a universal translator. It's fascinating to think about that because I was flying just the other day, um, yesterday. I flew from Vietnam in the last 5 days. I flew from Vietnam to Qatar to New York, down to Virginia, back to Chicago,
Holy.
then to Qatar, then back to Vietnam. It was a
That's
whirlwind of
pretty
5
crazy.
days, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, dude, I'm just exhausted, achy and everything. But one of the things that was interesting in that is that there was a couple that sat down on me in the flight. It was this German lady and her husband.
Mhm.
And she looked at me and she started speaking German and smiling. And I was just like, I don't understand German. It's like, sorry. And I just sat down and then suddenly she seemed really, really pissed. And I was just like, what
Oh.
did I misunderstand right there?
Huh.
What was wrong? And she just glared at me for like the first couple minutes of the flight. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now. I don't get it. And luckily that flight had really good Wi-Fi. So I pulled out, ChatGPT and I was just like, I typed this message like, hey, if I offended you, sorry. Here you go. And he's like, no, 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 everything's okay. She just wanted your seat. She didn't want the window seat and she wanted the aisle seat. And I was like, well, we're already in takeoff. Sorry about that. But it's interesting because later on in the flight, like, poor lady was having a hard time not able to express her emotions. The person leaned back in front of her, and instead of saying, "Excuse me, it's the meal service right now. Can you put your chair up?" She starts shaking the damn chair, and I was just like,
Oh, jeez.
"Whoa, yo, whoa! You can't do that. I don't know. You've never flown before. You
She's
can't
using
shake
body
their
language.
chair." Using body language, but it was like what fascinated me was this inability to communicate. And so it's like I'm fascinated by anything that can help us communicate better, especially when it comes to content. So, bravo for creating this. But like, I wanted to ask this because I think about it, you think about just one-on-one communication, but like I think about agencies and production houses. How can they begin to integrate dubbing into their service stack without overwhelming clients? Because it can seem like something that, how do they even wrap their head around that?
Yeah. I mean, really, the most natural way I can imagine to do it is pretty close to the way YouTube's doing it. Although I don't really like all the ways YouTube is doing it. And that would be to get it locked down to the locale that is set on the person's browser. And if they're joining in the video, just have it automatically routed to that and brought to them. But if they've already been watching like English content, you can probably just keep on showing them English content, Is that kind of what you mean? Like
Yeah,
systematically?
it is
Or
actually
okay.
systematically. I'm just fascinated by that because, you know, I wonder if companies, I'll say it like this. I work with some people and I had one client, really good guy, and we started changing like his video like this, right? So we put he's one of my friends too. We put like everyone on YouTube is kind of in the podcast is doing this hook that you start off with. And he's like, I freaking hate this, man. It's not the way I like it. And it
Okay.
was like, but it increases retention, like because you're starting off with this more dynamic thing that this person's talking about. And like you might get people on. So I wonder with, people who are bringing this, how do you work with people and help them understand, yeah, this is important, because it's like you can reach a lot more people, you can get more views, you can get more customers, things like that.
Yeah. That's honestly a very hard one. The
Right,
very nice thing
right.
for us these days is we kind of get a lot of pushback from people, and then we show them the graphs of the creators that have used us. And it's like, hey, Topper Guild over here got 60 million subscribers extra in 1 year, from 20 million to 60 million. And John Nellis jumped by 10 million in like 4 months. And so when we show
That's
them these
wild.
graphs, they understand how important it is. It's like, wow, that's That's quite the multiplier. It's one of the most fun things for me, actually, that if you go to like View Stats or Social Blade and you look at any of these large channels, you can see exactly when they started dubbing with us, because there's just this massive hockey stick that happens in their growth. But it's definitely not something that people think about natively, and maybe they shouldn't be necessarily, because they should be just thinking about their content. It's like the ideal situation would just be that it's automatically happening for everyone. But yeah, I think it'll increasingly become something that people are aware of, because it's like literally the fastest way I have ever seen any channel grow. So yeah, but that's a hard one, because it's just not something people think about.
So let me ask you this, so the workflow, does someone
Mhm.
call you up and say, hey, we want to start doing this? Is this something that you guys just roll out natively? Do they have to have separate channels? How does it work? How does someone really integrate into your software, into their workflow?
Yeah, so they just go and they connect their YouTube channel on our website, and they can start just clicking on the videos they want, and it will put them through the system, and they select what languages they want. It will just automatically dub whatever they want. And when they're done, they can take it, and we have this Chrome extension where they can just go into their YouTube studio and they hit sync, and then it will just upload all these different audio tracks to the individual videos. Because YouTube, there's kind of like two ways to dubbing. One of them is through these multiple language audio tracks. And that's more of like a recent feature that YouTube actually rolled out to everyone last November. So like before that, we were exclusively working with large YouTubers that had access to that, because we really don't recommend that you make separate channels. But the other way is to make separate channels. The YouTube algorithm seems to very, very heavily prefer that you put it all under one thing. It really just boosts your entire content library at the same time. And that's really where we have seen the massive growth with people. But yeah, all in all, it's pretty simple. So then they go in and they just hit sync, and then it will pull in like the translated subtitles, the translated metadata, and the audio. And soon thumbnails too, because we have an automatic thumbnail translator. There's only a few of our users that have it, like Nick DeGiovanni has it, and it's very, very gatekept right now, but YouTube says that they're going to be allowing that for everyone soon to upload these different thumbnail translations. So, yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm just fascinated by it, because it seems to me to be so interesting. And like, imagine this, right? And this is one of the beautiful things of this. It's like you are in one market, right? And you're selling your kid, and you're selling lemonade in your little neighborhood, not just your neighborhood, like the 4 houses around you, right? And it seems like if each neighborhood was a different language, people have been isolated by these lines, where the reality is, man, I'm sure people in all different parts of the world would love to watch. I mean, Nick Giovanni's stuff is amazing. My daughter and I watch it. But what about the
Oh,
kid over
cool.
there that doesn't speak English? Yeah,
Yeah.
but dude, we love Nick. We watch him like left and right.
Oh,
His
phenomenal.
stuff is great. Yeah, we're big foodies in my house, and so
Cool.
it's like we're watching this stuff, going, this is awesome. But my daughter tries to go and talk to her friends about it, and some of her friends don't speak English well, and so she wants to watch it with them, and they're just like, well, hang on, what about Vietnamese? But now with translations, it's like, boom, it's right there. You've got all this, and it's easy for people to access, which is fascinating to me, again, because at the end of the day, we're building bridges, and you're building bridges with content, kind of sharing this shared love of something. I mean, that's what I think most of this internet is about. It's people coming together for a shared love of whatever that thing might be. For my daughter, food, and for my daughter's channel, Ilani's Little World, science, a love of science and technology. I mean, dude,
Oh,
I'm
cool.
seriously,
Yeah.
my daughter's channel, Ilani's Little World, we do STEM, we do science, we do all these things, but we had, and I was looking at our numbers, we had this, it's super competitive in English, and when we do kids content, one of our biggest areas, they love it in India. Man, they love
Oh,
our
yeah.
content in India, and like the science stuff, parents are like, go watch this, it's science and STEM. But I was sitting there thinking the other day when I was reading up, I was like, well, maybe this would benefit us. And the thing is, it's like, I'm sure it would, but one of those things of like that, maybe this would benefit us. And I think that people have this worry about like, well, how do I do it? How do I step through that door? How do I go into this area that I don't necessarily know? How would you recommend people who are starting to go, is this something I should be doing? How would you tell them, yes, it is, and this is your first step?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on a few things, I guess. One of them would be that like their channel is relatively healthy, they are seeing consistent growth. Another thing is just kind of like the mindset of it. Like, is this more of a hobby thing for them, or is it more of a business thing? Because if it's a hobby, then maybe you don't want to take that investment and put it there. But if it's a business thing, then it's much more justifiable, especially in the long term, for you to be doing. So for people that are trying to get started on it, it'd be like, okay, do I have pretty good evergreen videos? Because I believe it's very important to have that landing pad of videos. If your content is just like one and done, you're probably not going to have that much success dubbing because it's never going to catch on with these other audiences. And I guess the same could be said, honestly, for like English content. You need some form of these videos that seem to linger and seem to just continue getting views. So if you're getting
100%.
pretty healthy evergreen videos, then it's like, okay, take whatever percentage of those you feel comfortable with. We recommend that you have at least like 10 of those, like at a minimum, and then you dub them all at the same time and you release those all at the like as close to the same amount of time as possible, preferably within the same day. Release them all at the same time and release your most recent videos. And that just tends to be what we see works for people.
And then it just starts then making waves, and the people kind of see the impact, and then from then on, they just every video that comes out, they're making sure that it has multiple language versions then.
Yeah. And we recommend also that they put out those multiple language versions like as close as possible to the actual upload of the video, preferably at the exact same time, because again, they all help each other. So your initial English views will help the YouTube algorithm boost the Spanish views, and the Spanish views will help them boost the Hindi views, and so on and so forth. It's just this massive compounding effect.
That's rad. It's super interesting to me. I mean, there shouldn't be a reason that people are not tuning into your content. Like, but let me ask you this: what's the real ROI math? Like, if someone has 100,000 subscribers, what kind of growth upside are we actually talking about? Are they going to see a big return?
Yeah. I would imagine so if they're doing it correctly, in all honesty. Like, I've seen quite a few 100,000 subscriber channels that, like, one of them's name was Jesse Chappis, like, a year ago, and he does some kind of podcasting content. But for him, he sent us at some point this photo where he had, like, his multiple silver play buttons because it was back before the multilingual audio, so it was all launched on separate channels. And I think his Spanish views, his Spanish, like, subscriber count was even higher than his original. So it's definitely possible for channels of all sizes. I would really recommend, I've seen people do it from the inception, but if you're not like very, very knowledgeable about what you're doing, you should probably wait until you're pretty sure that you're like solidly within your niche and resonating with them, and you kind of have a few things under your belt, just to be sure that the content that you're dubbing is actually going to be effective. But that's just a time and experience thing, I suppose, rather than a explicit subscriber count cutoff kind of thing.
So when someone comes in, are they doing all these different languages, or are they having to pick what languages they think might be valuable? Or are you doing just like, let's do 50? How do you pick those out?
Yeah, it depends on the channel, honestly. Like, a lot of our creators will literally just do all the languages we have. Like, Nick Pro, for instance, is a channel with, I don't know, he has many, many millions of subscribers, and he just does all 80 whatever languages that we have. And then John Nellis is another YouTuber in like Europe, and he'll do like 40 something languages, and then Topper will do like 15 languages. And then there's lots of them that just do Spanish. Like Tucker Carlson uses our stuff, and he mainly does Spanish, but then occasionally I guess he'll throw in like an Arabic and a Russian in there for whatever reason. I think because one of his videos is more catered towards that or something. So it really depends on the creators, and a lot of them do just crank down the lever as hard as they can. But typically, I would say the average is around like 12 languages that people will select. And we normally help a lot of these creators determine what languages they should be selecting based on like the data that we have and their niche, because it's all important. But generally, the top ones will be like Hindi, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese. Let's see if anything else really comes to mind. Those are the heaviest hitters. Vietnamese as well, for sure, and Thai. Anyways, just kind of pulling some off the top of my head, but yeah.
So it's so interesting. So then, do these videos live under the same channel, just under like they creating different playlists, like Mr. Beast Spanish, Mr. Beast Thai?
Oh, No, so actually on YouTube, the way they have it now is that if you go down to like that little settings icon in the bottom right-hand video, you can click it and then you'll see this thing that says audio tracks, and then you can select the different languages. And YouTube will natively route on like your one video upload will natively, if it's like a Spanish viewer coming on, it will natively route them to that Spanish audio track. And so it is all living under the same channel, but your English viewers will never know it unless they go click that settings button and then switch to a different language. And YouTube will just automatically route it where it needs to go.
I have seen Mr. Beast in Vietnamese, and my nephew and niece were like, "Dude, it's Mr. Beast, and he's speaking Vietnamese." So that's
Very cool.
pretty awesome. Yeah, man. So that's interesting. I gotta like, you got my brain thinking some things now. But I wanted to ask you this, like, does global growth change content strategy, or can you literally duplicate and distribute the same content across languages?
Yeah. I guess it depends in some ways. Like, as an example, prior to thumbnail translation being a thing, we've seen lots of creators like Mr. Beast. If you look at his older content compared to his newer content, where he just kind of stopped putting words in his thumbnails and it was all more pictographic. And presumably, I haven't asked their team this like explicitly, but presumably that was more for that universality, since most of his viewers are non-English at this point. So it for sure changes it in that way, but I wouldn't let it change what you're doing. If what you're doing is something that is already resonating with people, there's a very high probability that it will resonate massively with people throughout the world. Unless you're like heavily, heavily niched down on English-specific topics, for instance, it will probably do quite well everywhere. It's pretty hard for me to think of an example that would not have a corresponding large base in another language, in all honesty.
I'm fascinated by that because it's interesting that, the universality of so many videos are there these days. Like a Mr. Beast video, it's not American centric. I haven't seen too many people that are like really one nation centric. For the big YouTubers, Mark Rober, man, his stuff could go universal. It could be going anywhere. It could be talking about anything. Same with you name a creator these days. It's not really that hyper focused on one region, and so it to me, like, to have language not being the thing that stands in your way is a big deal and is so interesting to me. Now, what role does thumbnail translation and nice, one of those moments, right?
No, you're all good.
My little headset. What role does thumbnail translation and metadata localization play compared to just dubbing audio?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, in all truthfulness, we don't have a lot of data to back up that, like, the metadata itself, how important it is. But at the very least, you could argue that it offers a more complete package. Like, if a Spanish viewer is seeing an English thumbnail, they are probably pretty unlikely to click on it if they don't understand a word of English. So it plays in those ways. And I'm sure with thumbnail translation coming out that it will be something that really bolsters that whole industry even more, the whole side of things. But as far as like your description, like, and obviously your title for the exact same reason, if it is in Spanish, it will likely attract Spanish speakers quite a bit more. But for things like description and subtitles, for subtitles, you can see like a 5% boost in views on natural, organic, like original language views. And so I don't know why that wouldn't also just carry over to these different languages, just because a lot of people prefer them. But beyond that, it's more of just a complete package kind of thing.
That's awesome, man. Well, I want to ask you another one because does it need to be like, can any kind of content be translated? I mean, do you see people doing podcast translated? Do you see vlogs, TikTok videos? Is it more long form, not short form? What do you see people really focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we have pretty much seen everyone doing everything under the sun and quite successfully.
Awesome.
So we've seen podcasts that are even like 4 hours plus go through the system. And initially when those were going through, it would like tank our servers. But now it can handle up to like 100 hours. And we've seen down to just like 1 second shorts even. So really everything under the sun. Shorts are very, very good to pull in a lot of views and to get the algorithm ticking, and then long form is also just very good in its own right. And so we normally see creators just do both across their whole channel. Basically every content they put out, they tend to dub into these different languages and get them all uploaded.
That's awesome. Well, I want to ask you this one because this question is kind of something, for Ilani's little world, I would love to teach kids science and STEM and about animals and things around the world. But we only have 11,000 followers, for creators under 50,000 subs. Is dubbing a growth lever or is it a distraction?
Mm. Um, for creators under 50,000 subs, is it a growth lever or is it a distraction? I mean, truthfully, it can be both. One of the most important things, at least that I feel like I have learned in business, at least, is what to say no to is almost more important than what to say yes to. And
Right.
if it's going to prohibit you from, if it's going to prohibit you from putting out more content and resonating with your audience, then you should say no to it and you should prioritize the one thing that actually matters. But if it's not going to, then it'll help. So it'll always be a growth lever, but it could be a distraction for you, for sure.
I think that's a good point, man. Well, 5 years from now, will every serious creator be multilingual by default? And what happens to the ones who ignore it?
I'll be honest, I think it's not even 5 years from now. Pretty much every serious creator these days are multilingual, with the exception of a few, but those few are very rapidly becoming that way just because there's just too much data behind what has gone on. It is the reason that Mr. Beast jumped by 300 million subscribers. Like I mentioned, there are, if you look at the past, at least from what we know, the past year, there's the top 10 growing YouTubers. And I know specifically that 4 of them use our platform. And I know specifically that most of their growth came from those different languages. So it's really something that is pretty hard to ignore at this point if you're to that stage of trying to hyper grow your channel. So I would argue that it's pretty much something now, and if not, then within the next 4 months it'll be adopted by any channel over 1 million subscribers for sure.
That's awesome. Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing and your company and this awesome tech?
Yeah, sure. So our website is DittoDub.com, and if these people, if they want to learn more about it, they can look at some of the videos we have there, or anyone on my team is happy to build a customized strategy for anyone who submits their YouTube channel. Totally free, just to get it all put up for you. And whether you dub with us or not, if you are a YouTuber and you've kind of solidified in your niche, it is really something that you should heavily consider. It's just too high of a leverage activity right now.